Okay, let's go ahead and get started on our Unreal streaming session. We got a lot of topics to kind of go over. We got Blackheart in stage at this point. Sorry for the wait, my friend. Let me go ahead and invite you to speak now. And
Hello there.
hello, and we'll go ahead and get started on the topics that we um, kind of aligned ourselves with yesterday.
Yeah.
Um, so if for those of you that might not have been here yesterday, uh, before we jump into trying to find or trying to do something that is um, um, before we step into our first game, we're gonna need to kind
Before
of
we start cloning a game as practice.
yeah, we're gonna need to cover some certain topics, to understand what we need to go about doing. Now, obviously, we got source control done and out of the way. That was handled yesterday.
Yep.
Um, but we got audio, AIs, physics, game controls, animating character and objects, object collision, blueprints, level transition. We're gonna try to figure, and we're gonna need to figure out like what platform we're gonna be putting this to, if not like multiple. We're gonna pick a game that we want to build first off, and then we'll go on from there, and then we'll design like a structure of that game so that we can build it. You know, so that when we can easily refer to it and go, oh yeah, we need to do this, we need to do that in order to build the game proper. So um, so today is going to be concerning audio. Um, so let me go ahead and bring up the documentation here. And we have there's some topics about audio here somewhere. I forget exactly where.
Working with audio is the one you're looking for.
Yeah,
You can always use the filter page and just write it down.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Found it?
Ah, yep, found it. But it was its own topic away from understanding the basics. And there's a lot here, bear in mind, the
Yep.
working with audio topic. So, which I mean, let's face it, it makes sense. Um, because when you look at um, when you look at making a game, you're looking at different, um, you're looking at kind of overall like different parts of it. You're looking at the sounds that a character might make. You're looking at sounds that a like the enemy might make. Are you shooting a gun? Do you have gun sounds? You have overall music in the game.
Yeah,
Um,
ambient sounds as
yeah,
well.
have ambient sounds exactly. We have sound effects. Just like grunts or the like. Um, you know, there you might have like jump scares or something like that in there. So you might have like trigger sound cues. Um, you might need to change the music from one song to a different song depending on like the situation that you're in. Like say you're playing an RPG, you're playing, you're going across the land, and suddenly you get the random, random battle, and suddenly it switches over to battle music or something like that.
Mm.
There's a lot of different things that goes into audio, so it kind of makes sense that there's a lot here that that they're kind of covering. So, um, that being said, I should probably show Chrome. And there we go. Don't really need to show the Unreal Engine because we're not really going to be going over the Unreal Engine itself during this. Well, we might refer to it
We might.
from time to time, but
Yeah, like maybe it'll reach a point where it does. Okay, try and put this audio on this object.
yeah, exactly. Okay, so for those of you that are like watching my stream right at this moment in time, we are going to the working with audio topic under the full, documentation kind of thing. It's its
Flavor.
own like major topic for the most part, separate from like understanding the basics and stuff like that. So there's a lot of subtopics underneath it, which, are we going to cover them all? Probably not. Maybe. I don't know. It seems like some of these might be a little too niche for for what we want to do. Like I'm seeing like OSC plugin. I have no idea what OSC is. Open sound control. Okay, no idea what that's all about. So
Don't not entirely sure now.
yeah, so there's probably topics that we're probably gonna go ahead and skip for the most part, but um we can at least start off with the first page here, working with audio, and go from there. Sounds good?
Yep.
Okay, so sound is vital to creating believable and immersive environments. Believable?
Debatable. Let's
Debatable.
say.
Um, Immersives? Yeah, yeah, true.
If you're
Uh,
making a realistic kind of game, yeah.
um, but believable? Probably not.
Now.
You know, yeah, but I mean, you can definitely, change things up a little bit. You can make it unbelievable. So, from ambient sounds to interactive sounds of vehicles or weapons, from music cues to spoken dialogue, audios in a game can make or break the user experience. I mean, there's nothing wrong with breaking the user experience if that's your intention. You know, believe
There are
me.
games that thrive on breaking the experience.
I mean, there's games that have actively broken the fourth wall and have
Yep.
freaked people out because of it. You know, one game in particular that I know off the top of my head is Doki Doki Literature Club. You know,
There's also Stanley Parable.
indeed. So I mean, there's a lot that might thrive on it. So there's nothing wrong with breaking the user experience. If you do it right. You know, if
Yeah.
that's if that's not your intention, then well, that can be a bad thing. But if that is your intention, then you know, obviously that's good. So the audio engine system in Unreal Engine provides tools and features that offer ways for the sound designers and engineers to mold audio to match their visions. This means that a clean version of the sound can be produced once in an external application, imported, and then crafted within the engine to create the desired result. Okay, so now we got like it looks like multiple topics, which is kind of in line with the list to the left, I think. Let's see, I'm seeing audio modulation overview, audio volume, convolution reverb, MIDI and Unreal Engine. Yeah, this is pretty much the same topics. They're just putting them all on this one page for you to kind of go to these other pages. So do you want to go in their starting out order on the page itself, or do you want to go in the order that is being presented on the left? Um, you know, like they're showing ambient zones on the left being first, whereas on the web page itself, they're showing audio modulation overview.
Hmm.
I mean, we will eventually get to the ambient sounds. I saw that below. At least I think I saw it below. Mm, actually,
I see ambient sound actor user guide. Ambient sound?
ambient zones are not here on this page.
No, it's not visible here.
Interesting. Well, that makes me feel like we should really kind of stick with the left-hand side
Probably.
because they didn't include that in this page. So, so shall we go with the ambient zones and go from there?
Yeah.
Okay. So, ambient zones. Creating ambient zone audio zones using the ambient zones properties of audio volumes. So, ambient zones are an inexpensive interior-exterior ambient audio solution. Benefits of ambient zones include makes the transition from interior to exterior areas sound good. Okay. Reduces labor for audio designers, as less sound actors will need to be placed and iterated on inside-outside spaces. Reduces game systems overhead due to savings in number of needed sound actors to define interiors and exteriors. Okay. Um, ambient zone settings. The settings for an ambient zone define how sound actors located inside and outside of its associated audio volume are altered by the player's location. A simple example is how this works is shown below. So you have an inside zone and then an outside zone being displayed there. In the image above, the gold box around a section marked as inside is an ambient zone volume. Two speaker icons are sound actors. As you can see, one sound actor is located inside the ambient zone and the other is located outside the ambient zone. Here's the behavior of the ambient zone volume playing a level. When the player is outside of the ambient zone, the sound actor located inside the ambient zone will have the volume multiplier and LPF effect applied to it. I don't know what LPF is. Um, we'll have to see about that a little bit later, unless you know about it yourself.
No, I do not. I'm gonna Google it just in case.
Okay. Um, when the player enters the ambient zone, the sound actor located inside the ambient zone will return a 1 multiplier for volume and LPF over a uh, specified fade time. At the same time, the sound actor located outside of the ambient zone will have a volume and LPF multiplier applied to it over a specified fade time. Um, when the player exits the ambient zone, the sound actor outside the ambient zone will return to its previous default volume and LPF values using the previous fade time. And the sound actor located inside the ambient zone will have its volume multiplier and LPF values changed via the ambient zone settings for the ambient zone. So, okay, here it is. Low pass filter.
Yeah. Bypass filter is an audio signal processor that removes unwanted frequencies from a signal above a determined cutoff frequency. So it's like noise cancellation.
Hmm. But why would you want that?
Well, if you're going inside, you want certain noises to be just you to stop hearing it. Like you're say you're like have your character walking in a city. You hear all the crowds, all the walking, and you walk into a shop. The LPF would block out all that sound and leave only the sound you want there to stay.
Well, I mean, you have the interior and you have the out, and you have the two different sound actors, one for the inside and one for the outside. And if you go from the inside to the outside, it changes those voice actors, So what you're hearing on the inside is now suddenly changed to the outside. So unless you have like the outside, kind of surrounding the inside, kind of thing, um, then maybe I could see the need of doing that in the sense that, like you said, being in a city, you have the, you know, the traffic, the sounds of the city, and that might not necessarily fade away. So maybe you want to allow for the outside voice, the outside sound actor to kind of bleed into the inside, maybe.
Yeah,
How it
like
handles
everything
that, I
one
don't really
singular
know.
instance. Yeah,
So, yeah, I don't know. Interesting. We'll have to kind of play with that, I guess. Well, I
yeah.
mean, if if we want to even do that, but it's something to maybe remember later.
That will depend on how we start like building our levels, I guess. If we
All right.
want everything to exist in the same instance, or we do we want it to be a separate instance?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we might just have like one sound and that's it, right? Um, or one sound actor and that's about it. Um, but I kind of doubt. No, in some ways I kind of doubt that too. So, um,
That all depend on our level design.
yeah. So, but depending on what we do, or like what game we make, we first make, to start off with. Hmm. Can we do something along those lines? Like I'm trying to think, like if we make a really basic game at the very start, what simple game would allow for us to do something like an inside and outside um, ambient sound like that? I can't really think of too many games that would allow for that. Um,
Well, let's see. Of classic games, I cannot think of any classic game.
yeah.
Maybe from 2010s you gotta start looking that started doing something like that.
Well, I mean,
Mm,
even if it's like a new, even if it's a newer game, but it's simple to make, we can still try to do that. But once again, we have to kind of keep it simple. You know, we don't want to overload ourselves too much on this.
yeah,
Um,
I'm trying to think of an example about classic games. I can't think of anything classic because the classic games what they normally did is they would have the interior of a building on a separate instance.
yeah. Um,
Except some 2D games. I think there was a few 2D games where you could go in and out of structures freely. Can't remember the name of one now.
I mean, you might be able to do something like that with like maybe a Super Mario Brothers, like you go down into the pipe and you know, you're in a sense changing the audio, the sound actor if you're going into like a different zone like that, right? So I mean, you could try to have like an ambient sound of the overworld, kind of bleeding into that pipe area maybe, but um, instead of
Mm,
unless of course you're wanting to do um, unless you have the entire map being the pipe area, like what was it, 2-1 in the original um, Super
yeah,
Mario
from
Brothers.
there they what they did on that one is they unloaded everything from the surface and only kept what was in the pipe area.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they didn't, in the original game, they didn't even have the bleed-in effect from they just changed the music. There wasn't any kind of ambient sound in the original
No.
Super Mario Brothers. So, they didn't have any kind of like, inside outside kind of thing. They just kind of changed the song and that's it, you know.
Yep.
And then maybe added like an echo effect on sound and maybe, um depending on the game, like, like Super Mario World, when you go into like the caverns and stuff like that, you had that like an echo effect that they added in. But I mean, that's not the same as the ambient zone as they're kind of talking about here. So interesting. Well, this might be something that might be kind of outside of what we need for now, but it might be something that we might need to remember for later. Like,
Yeah.
you know, if we do design a game, like an RPG, and we have our characters going into a city and they enter a shop, then we may want to have that ambient sound change. But right now, I can't really see a need for it at this point. So, um, we'll have to figure that out depending on the game, obviously. Um, but maybe something to note for later. All right, moving on.
Yep.
Okay, so you can access the ambient zone settings from the details panel of the audio volume by expanding it as seen below. Okay, so the properties that are being shown there are exterior volume, the final volume of exterior sounds when player inside this ambient zone. So so you might have the exterior still having a certain volume level when you go inside that particular ambient zone. So that's interesting. Time to fade to new exterior volume in seconds. Hmm. Okay.
I guess something like again using the being outside and going inside example, like you open the door, you start going in, and during that time, it's the audio starts to fade, whether in or out.
Yeah.
Like how long you want that fade to be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it could be almost instantaneous, or it might, you might want that transition, you know.
Yeah, that will
So,
be up to how we decide to handle that.
yeah. Like if it's like a Super Mario where it's like, it fades to black and it comes back up on in a new area altogether, then you wouldn't necessarily need to have a fade in that particular transition.
Hmm.
So it might be instantaneous. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, whereas if you're like in an RPG and you're kind of going through a revolving door, then you might have, lots of fade going, especially if you keep on rotating through that door, right?
Yeah.
You know, you might have
Yeah,
a.
another example I can think of now that I remember is Rogue Galaxy. In the maps, they would have some like side rooms or maybe shops, and going in would have that fading, like when the music, like the background sound or music, like doesn't abruptly stop or change. It will fade away, then fade in the new audio,
Mm,
and all existed within the same instance.
yeah. Okay. Exterior low pass filter multiplier applied to exterior sounds when inside. Okay. Exterior LPF time. Time to fade to new low pass filter level in seconds. Okay. Interior volume. Final volume of interior sounds when outside this ambient zone. Okay. Interesting. So if you, for example, let's as an example of this, let's say you want to go into a library in a city, right?
Yeah.
So you enter into the library and um, um, it's super quiet in there. Obviously, it's a library. You're shh, be quiet, but you still hear the outside, right?
Yeah.
But then you leave the library and you don't hear anything inside it because it's completely quiet. So the interior volume might be completely zero. So that, when you're outside of it, you don't hear anything going on inside, right?
Hmm.
So, potentially. I don't know. Hey there, Jesus lover. How you doing there, bud? Welcome to the stream. Um, not quite sure. Are you confused about something? You say, huh, but what are you confused about? Um,
Another thing that could be used for is like you said, you go inside a quiet area and all the audio outside like starts to lower its volume until it's kind of muffled a bit.
yeah. But I mean, the interior volume is talking about, when you are outside of that zone,
And
is
yeah, it will depend if you yeah, if it's in a library, you're not gonna hear anything. But if you're outside a shop, then there will be like muffled sound of people inside the shop or something.
depends on the shop. If
Like a
it's
blacksmith shop, for example.
a blacksmith shop, you could probably hear a little bit of an ambient sound, but at the same time, um, you might need to, there might need to have a little bit more, um, you might need to have like more zones outside of that.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, the further away you go from the blacksmith, you won't be hearing the blacksmith anymore.
Yeah.
So the further away you go from it, the less you hear of that interior sound. So if you want to really, you know, add to like realism of it, right?
Or
Otherwise,
live.
hmm,
Or give it life to the area, sort of.
right, right. If you want to have
Yeah,
that,
a place can look realistic, but if there's not a lot of ambient sound, then is the place really alive to begin with?
true, true.
Okay.
But I'm just saying, it'd be really weird for you to be like crossing an entire metropolis of city And then on the other side of the city, you still hear the blacksmith on the opposite side. It's like
No,
there's a little
no,
bit
no.
of there's a little bit of a problem with that,
Yeah,
that
that
kind of
would
thing.
be a bug right there.
Yeah. So that's why, um, the this interior volume, sure, might work if you're like right next to the shop in this particular example, right? But if you get
Right.
as you go further and further away, then it'd be like, why am I still hearing the blacksmith? Kind of thing. So that would be something that
Yeah,
we'll have to kind of
that
look at a little bit more.
yeah, that interior volume would probably control that probably.
Um, Probably. Well, I mean, the interior volume would contain it for that one zone, but you might need to have
Right.
like
The interior LPF would be the what would control what you hear outside.
yeah.
Right.
So you might need like multiple zones that kind of continue to reduce down the interior volume. Hmm.
I guess the LPF would be the one controlling the volume of said structure. It will determine, okay, even the interior volume is this. If the person's outside, this is gonna be its volume. The LPF will override it.
Yeah, but I'm trying to figure out like how would you go about actually trying to fade out the blacksmith the further you go? Because the dangers of that is that like if you keep on doing like a zone, like you um think think multiple boxes, right? Each box contained within another box, right? You have a large box, you have a medium-sized box, and then you have a small box, right? All
Right.
kind of contained within each other. That small box is the blacksmith, right? And interior of that small box, you have the exterior volume, being decreased, so you might still hear the city outside of it, but for the most part, you're only hearing the interior for the most part, right? The interior has the most amount of volume going on, and so on and so forth. But once you exit said blacksmith, then you have that volume of the blacksmith there, the interior volume being reduced, so you're still hearing the blacksmith, right? But then you go even further out, you go from that medium box that you're in to the large box, right? And suddenly you can say, okay, well, we're not going to have an interior volume for that medium box, right? The the medium box will have the sound equal to zero, right? So you won't hear the blacksmith anymore, but at the same time, it might seem a little odd, especially if that blacksmith it might be like in middle of the market, right? So now you're losing the like a market sound effects, you know, like the hustle and bustle of a market might be within that medium box, right? But if you go
Right.
leave that medium box, then suddenly you don't hear any sound from that market. You get what I'm saying? It's like how do you go about handling something along those lines?
Well, we don't know if it's not the engine itself that handles that or not.
Well, I mean, this is something that you work with the zones themselves. So, you have the inside and outside zones.
Yeah, but once we
So,
configure that, it'll be the engine that will use the settings we use to determine all of that stuff. So, and that's what we don't know. How does the engine handle? what does the engine do with those settings once we put them in?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I'm just looking at this and going, if we turn the interior volume for the medium box to 0, so we don't hear the blacksmith, that would basically cut off any sound in that area for like if we're dealing with a market. So if you exit that medium box, you know, then sure, you no longer hear the blacksmith, but you no longer hear the market hustle and bustle either. So it's like, I could, it's one of those things where it's like, you know, this is great. This and it's interesting to kind of see what you can do with it. But I can also see potential problems trying to get it to kind of work the way you kind of want it to work. Um, like I'd want to have like a way to go, hey, once I'm like 2 boxes away from that small box, then I shouldn't hear that small box, but I should still hear the medium box, that kind of thing. You know, that's my mindset, but um,
It'll be a bit of trial and error for us to figure it out, probably.
yeah, and um, we might not be able to get it to be perfect either. It would probably require a lot of trying to like change the zones around to get it to work the way we want it to work, right? So, hey, a lot to consider there. Okay, interior time tied to fade to new interior volume in seconds. Low pass filter multiplier applied to interior sounds when outside for interior LPF, and time to fade to new low pass filter level in seconds for interior LPF time. Okay, so creating an ambient zone. So create an audio volume and place 2 ambient sound actors in the level, one inside the volume and the other outside the volume. Assign a large radius looping sound to both ambient sound actors. In the details panel of the audio volume, expand the audio volume properties. Expand the ambient zone settings to reveal its properties. In the ambient zone properties, set the exterior volume to 0.5. This is the final volume of ambient sounds that are outside of the ambient zone when the player is inside the ambient zone. I mean, we've already kind of learned all those details there, so they're just basically setting these numerical values for 6, 7, 8. Create a new sound class and in its properties check apply ambient volumes. Assign the sound class to both the interior and exterior sounds from the details panel of each sound. Rebuild the geometry, enter audio volume with the ambient zone you just set up, and exit the audio volume. Um, did you want to maybe try to see if we can get this to work, or do you want to maybe do that tomorrow? To
Do we
maybe,
even have any audio to work with?
I'm sure that there's probably something that we might be able to kind of play around with. Um, I mean, they gave us art assets, right? So, you know, there should probably be sound assets as well.
Mm, let me quickly open up.
Yeah, I
Uh,
see in the starter content there is an audio folder. So it doesn't have much, but I mean it has some. So um, so we could do um, hmm,
And audio.
Yeah. So we could try to like maybe play around with it tomorrow if you wanted to. But see if we can build those ambient sounds. Maybe we can even test to see how we could maybe work with those um, ambient sounds to kind of like, do that example that I was talking about with the whole blacksmith kind of thing and see if we can get to a point where we can, um, cut off like the blacks. Obviously we don't, you know, the audio cues might not necessarily have like a blacksmith sound to it, kind of thing. But we can maybe use what they gave us um, to try to create something, right? So, um,
Hmm. I guess we could probably mess around with it. I'll play. I don't know. Let's see. Because I'm looking at the folder of the audio.
mhm.
Not a lot of ambient audio. I mean, I see birds, I see wind.
Well, I mean,
Music, I'm not gonna touch as a precaution. I don't know, maybe lights for the interior.
I mean, they have
Most of it's reactionary audio. Like collapse, you put something that actually collapses. I don't see a point to have that in there.
well, some of these are repeating, such as Fire O1. So it kind of repeats through it. So it plays through the audio and then it repeats again. So otherwise it has that stop point, that like the collapse and explosions have. Whereas like fire has a constant. It seems like it has a looping sound to it, or it has looping to it. So um, I don't think it. Yeah, it has looping set to true for Fire One, so it allows for like a constant um, sound to it. So if we add that to say like an ambient zone for like the interior or for like the small box, we we go to the medium box. We change the ambient sounds of that, and then we make a larger box, and we'll see what happens. Does that sound like a plan? Like doing that,
Yeah,
like maybe tomorrow?
yeah, we can probably start with that. Try and experiment with that.
Okay. Then we'll focus on that tomorrow. I'm gonna go ahead and put down that we kind of were leaving off at the ambient zones in my notes here. Um, using Unreal Engine to make zones. And I figure we can probably just go ahead and use the program quick start. Just use that to make zones, and we go from there. Sound like a plan?
Mm. Or the level design quick start, which we have a small structure already in there.
True. Well, if maybe.
Yes, we do need to compare exterior with interior. Well, if we already have something a structure pre-made, okay, let's put the interior inside that little structure, then everything else outside.
Yeah, but I mean, it doesn't really matter. I mean, it is, no matter where we test it out, we're still kind of, get a general sense of um, what we're looking at. But yeah, I mean, the structure would probably be the best one to go with, and you have the general floor as like the medium box, and then like if you go outside of
Hey,
that
Galaxy
box,
Girl.
then then we might be able to do um, use that as
I'm
the
doing
larger
okay.
area.
What about you?
So sound like a plan?
Yeah, sounds like a plan.
All right. Um, well, it is it's 3 o'clock for me, which um is probably what 8 o'clock your time.
Yep, it's 8 o'clock right now. I
So
need to get some food.
exactly. So
Yeah,
it's
you came in just as we're finishing up the Unreal part. I will be back in a little bit there, Galaxy Girl, for Genshin.
yep, yep. I'll still be here, but I'm just gonna be doing video uploads and stuff like that myself. So not a whole lot of um um. It's gonna be boring content.
Yeah, yeah.
You know.
And you'll probably be solo for a little bit at the start of Genshin because I am inside the chasm.
Mhm. Okay.
I'm doing a little quest right there. Okay, bye bye. See you later there, Galaxy Girl.
Sounds good, man. Sounds good. Yeah.
As soon as I'm done with it, I'll let you know.
Yeah. I should probably do some more um of the quests myself because I haven't.
Mm,
Well, I mean, we did a lot of we did a fair amount of work last time
yeah.
with it,
And the
but
reason I am doing the chasms is because Hazel needs an item from a boss that's down there supposedly, and
mm,
I can see now where the boss is, but it's just like the chasm is its own zone almost.
mm, okay. I guess I'll need to consider working on start working on that
Yeah,
quest, huh?
yeah,
I mean, if you're going to be going up against a boss down there, then I might need to try to join you on that. So,
yeah. It is a looks like it is a two-part quest. One on the surface to get in, and the rest is down inside.
mm, okay.
Right
Well,
now, I'm already inside of it.
okay. Well, let's go ahead and cut the Unreal Engine tutorial off at this point. I'm gonna go ahead
Yep.
and stop my recording right now.